Jaxxon, we're a men's jewelry brand. Like, we've totally built this really cool brand community, and it's because we talk to customers every day. And as we're talking to customers, we are going through the experience just like them. And that's what we're always about, is like, we got to be proactive.
Customer experience is not customer support to me.
I'm like, I'm going to put myself in the customer's shoes, and I'm going to go through some random scenarios. I want to make it good for them the first time.
What is the one misconception about customer experience that you want to debunk?
Hey friends, welcome to Above the Fold podcast. I'm your host, Jess Servion. We're going to be talking about everything in your customer's journey. You're going to learn things about customer experience, brand experience, and marketing secrets that help you drive your brand success. So stay tuned, buckle up, and let's get into the episode.
Welcome back to another episode of Above the Fold podcast with me, Jess, your host. And this week, I have a lovely co-host. Her name is Caela Castillo, and she is head of CX at Jaxxon.
Hello, everyone.
Tell everybody just a little bit about Jaxxon, but also your background.
Yeah, well, I've been at Jaxxon for a few years now. I think I started January 2021. I was still living in New York, and even though I'm from Southern California, was living there. It's still kind of like the height of the pandemic. And actually, my brother is, he was roommates and best friends with the founders of Jaxxon. And they were still, really just such a startup at that point. And they were like, why don't you come onto the team? Like, you've worked in, customer support, you worked in retail, you have such a diverse background. Like, let's see what we can do. And, I've been there ever since. And, Jaxxon, we're a men's jewelry brand. We sell women's jewelry as well. We've recently started selling watches, which is such a cool thing. But we've totally built this really cool brand community, really focused around athletes and people who are interested in sports. And even if you're not interested in sports, just kind of like that friend camaraderie and being able to talk about, just everything you like doing in your life, from style to fitness to, whatever. And as someone who literally knows nothing about sports, I'm like, we're here for the vibes. I really have to look up a lot of information because I'm like, what does this mean? What do they do in this sport? I don't know. I'm a girly girl. I don't know too much. But at Jaxxon, we've really built up just so much in the last few years. And for me, as the director of customer experience, it's been such a cool journey just to be able to take a small team to new heights. And I think for myself, I've been able to learn a lot, not just about CX in general and how you can make a cool customer experience when you're not actually physically there to go into a store, but about myself too, and kind of how I can use my own creativity and my background to do something new and different, or just to create a cool experience, you know what I mean? And be able to connect with people when you're literally on the other side of a screen.
I love it. And that's, I think you share in the same philosophy, and this is actually why we are friends and became friends in this space. But and anybody tuning in knows this too, that customer experience is not customer support to me. The philosophy there is that you are creating an experience, a brand experience that is so dope and so tied to the brand that you are exuding that even when somebody has an issue.
Absolutely. And that's what I really, I fully believe in that, because I'm not trying, I don't want to have a customer service team where you're just you have a problem, let me fix it, then we're done. Absolutely not. I want to connect with you. I want to know something about you. I want you to feel excited to shop with us. Even if you're hey, I have questions, I want to keep you as a customer, and I want to build that relationship. And so even if you do have an issue or you don't, you just want to know more about the product, I want to keep that conversation going. And I want to have a conversation with you a month from now, a year from now, and just bring you on that journey. And just to be able, for me, I do love to shop. And even if it's not I'm not even buying anything, I'm going through an experience. And maybe it's just discovery. Maybe I'm learning about myself through looking at different products. But when you come to my team, I want you to feel connected,
Yeah. Well, that's actually a really interesting point. When you come to my team, I want you to feel connected. So what I'm curious about is, tell me a little bit about your onboarding process and for developing out that employee experience.
Yeah. So it's really, for me, I'm very hands-on, and while maybe things have changed over the years as like we've grown as a team, I definitely like I want to know who you are when you're applying to this position, whether, that you're in-house, you're remote, maybe it's an outsourced agent. It doesn't matter for me. You are all people who are part of this team. And that like first thing I ask is like, what gets you excited about like a brand or shopping at a company? Like what makes you excited about that? And, how do you feel when you're talking to other people? What if they're happy? What if they're angry? And I think knowing how to like, I love when people apply for, a job with us and they're like, I really like to help people, but I like to chat with them. Like, I kind of want to just know who they are, what they're doing, and I think that's where, maybe they're buying things for a special occasion, and I want to connect with them about that. And so, like, with my team, we get them on, and of course, like, we got to train them on processes and product knowledge. And I'm like, we have a culture here, you know what I mean? And I really value support. I want to support my team so much, and that comes back. You know what I mean? Like, if you support your team members, it doesn't matter what level they're at, it's going to come back tenfold. And so really, like, through our training, it's always like, there are no stupid questions. Ask them. Ask those questions. And, I have so many great people on my team who do training, they do shadowing. And I always like to talk, like every time we bring on new hires, I'm like, everyone has a different way of doing things. And that's okay. I know sometimes I'll still get on the phone with a customer and I'm like, why am I rambling on? But somehow like it became a successful phone call. And I'm like, we have some team members who are a little shy, but they know how to do, they get the job done. They're super meticulous, and that's okay too. And I think I want people to find their own voice, because I don't want you to think that we have this, you can only follow a macro. You have to follow a script. I don't like that. Like, I want to provide you with all the knowledge you need, and then be yourself. You know what I mean? Because for me, being authentic is super important.
Yeah. I think you actually just hit something really interesting. And like this kind of dives into like that experience and support type of piece. But I know like for me, like when I'm consulting on like projects for like CX projects specifically, a lot of times I come in and I'm revamping a gorgeous or a customer or like whatever the help desk is, right? And one of the things that we do is we start recreating like the macros, because the teams are so used to that.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, like a kind of an interesting dynamic is like when you come in as a consultant, it's like you're not necessarily the full-time like head of CX there. So and like you're coming into kind of like help with the process. Yeah. So you do have to do a little bit of development of the macros piece, but I agree with you. I wholeheartedly agree with you that it's not like when you're developing your team and you're even just like one-on-one, like whatever, it's like you don't want them to use those macros and be so dependent on it.
Yes, exactly. Because I we have customers who, hey, if they're contacting us a bunch over the years, it's because they're coming back. And I would hate for them to be like, damn, that is the same message I saw a year ago. That's the same one I saw 2 years ago.
Dude.
And it's so easy, I think, for brands like a CX team, like especially if they don't have a fully built out one, to be like, I'm setting it up and I'm gonna forget about it because it's done right the first time. But you have to change it. Each person has to be able to put their own spin on it. Like maybe the situation is a little bit different each time. You got to think about those things because like I don't want it to sound robotic. I don't want them to be like, wow, they use the same message all the time. Yeah. And then, you start to get into that territory of like, are they only robots? Is it just AI? When like, absolutely not. Like I use AI and I have real people and we want it to be realistic and like you're talking to a person, we're here to help you. And so that's where I think you gotta be able to balance it. You can't forget about this stuff. You can't just be like, I've set it up and I'm never going to touch it again. Yeah. Because people do notice that stuff. Your customers will pick up on it.
Yeah, totally. You also brought up another good point, right? AI. So what's so interesting that's on the market, and I think this is across marketing, CX, like everything, right? Yeah. Everyone and their mom has a new AI agent, okay? And like, listen, I actually really like AI. Like, I don't hate on AI. There's not like nothing. I think it's really important to kind of incorporate into your process and your procedures of CX or marketing, right? Because it does help you speed up. But what's so interesting is that people forget that you can't, like, AI is like not something you just like set up and you forget it.
Absolutely.
Like my dudes, okay? My dudes and ma'ams, all right? You need to go out there and please QA your AI, okay?
Thank you.
Like,
thank you.
You cannot, like, that's another thing. So your macros, your AI, like, I don't care if it's third-party tool, in your tools, whatever.
Right.
Please, for the love of God, QA these things.
Oh my God. That is one of my biggest pet peeves when people are like, I'm using ChatGPT, and they're like, well, it has to be correct. And I'm like, pretty sure there's a little disclaimer at the bottom that says, like, you need to check this. And, like, come on, you need to be looking into that stuff. And for us, like, we do use, AI tools in customer experience, like, different things. We always have a QA process. Yes. And, like, it's going to help you, but you have to put some effort into it. You have to check up on it. Like, are you just going to let the system go rogue and be like one of those sci-fi movies and be like, oh, well, guess what? It just took over our whole system. Like, no, you got to take care of it and nurture it. And I think there's so many ways where, like, it really does help people. But you got to know where to balance and check in on it.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think the two things that we're even talking about here is like macros and revamping those in AI, right? Mm-hmm. Which is an interesting thing that's like starting to happen in CX. Is like you're also seeing that. I mean, there's a couple of things that are really interesting, right? It's like, so CX used to traditionally be like, oh, support, service, this, that, and the other thing, but now you're also starting to see new jobs being created in CX, right? So you're starting to see retention jobs being created in it, like where like agents are doing more like win back type of campaigns. Yeah. The other piece of the two things that we're talking about, you're also starting to see copywriter positions, which I think is so valuable. Like even for us at Open Late, when we're going onto projects, we actually have a content writer on our team. She comes from a traditional like content writing background, but we've taught her CX things. So then she goes in and like helps and revamps like these macros to like not sound so robotic, right? But then on the other side of it, you're also starting to see AI jobs too, right? Because that QA isn't just doing tickets. Yeah. QA is also QAing your AI agent, right?
Absolutely.
And the same thing even like on our level, and this isn't to like a moment of hyping up like Open Late, but it's just like how we're even thinking about it is like, so we have content writer who's writing for us and doing those things, but we also have a position and somebody who does CX technical work. And I'm starting to, and the reason I'm doing this because I also want to inspire other brands that we might come in and revamp you and do all of these things. Yeah. But now it's your job to go and bring those people in.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think with us, like as I'm going through different strategies and testing out new forms of AI or automation, and I have people on my team who they spend, an hour of their day doing QA. And I'm like, it's not just the functionality of the system itself. I'm like, this is a great time to be like, well, if AI thought that was the right answer or solution for the customer, is it really the right solution? Maybe we need to think about how we're doing things as well, or how we phrase things, like, is a warranty the same as a replacement or the same as like, are we using the right terms? And I think too, in CX, that's what there's so much you can do. And I think like, within your team, you can, we tend to hire people on, hey, you're one of our support representatives. I try to find always like, what is your hidden talent? What are you really good at? And, like they are like, we are definitely restructuring our team to have more, you have a retention focus. You have more of like, the technical kind of, aspects. Like, what are you really good at? Some people are just amazing at reporting. And I'm like, damn, you are creating so many reports for me. I love this. And so you have to empower your team. And then for people who are maybe like at a higher level, there is just so much to contribute from the CX side. And I think that's where like, a lot of other, departments within your brand, they don't really understand. They're like, well, maybe the CX knows about this, but like, there's never a consistency to it. And that's like, I swear, I'm on a mission to be like, we're going to make you understand.
I know. Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I absolutely hear you. My background is very, comes from tech and then entered into e-commerce. So like from the tech background, like SaaS tech, feedback loops were so important to us because you're trying to convince people to adopt your features, adopt your product, right? So if something is wrong and there's bugs, you need to be able to go and like tell that to engineering and the developers so they can go and like redo things, whatever, figure it out, right? And one of the things that I brought into like my CX philosophy across e-commerce when I've worked with all these brands is that technical like feedback loop. And when I say technical, it's like I want to make sure that CX isn't not looked at as just support, but it looked at it from an experience point of view. So I've created feedback loops that have to do with retention and like why the customer is like coming in, because, and anybody that was you listening 5 seconds ago, I was actually rolling my eyes when Caela was talking, because it's so true. Like teams come to us when there's a problem, but not proactively.
Yes.
But yet we're the ones that are always proactive and thinking about all the things. So when you have that recall or you have that issue with your website, we're the first ones that know about it. But we got the data. So come to your moms and your dads in CX.
Exactly. 100%. All the time. I'm like, we will find every little mistake. And it's not just mistakes. Maybe it's just like, hey, customers are talking about this, or even like, did you realize as they're going through this process, like, we didn't mention like a sizing guide, or, we didn't include this information. And it's because we talk to customers every day. That is what we're doing. And as we're talking to customers, we are going through the experience just like them. And so rather than like, we're not going to wait for a problem to happen. We're going to tell you ahead of time, like, hey, we may need to change this. Like this product page, I think we're missing a few things. Or, when customers are going to, purchase a gift and these are the things they're going to need, they're not really going to find that so easily. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're always about, is like, we got to be proactive, because if you're just reactive, like you're never going to get better at your whole setup. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like the proactivity. I always say too, and I feel like you'll agree with this, answer the questions before they become questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're
going to put that on a hat.
100%. I love that.
Like,
I will wear that.
Above the fold, on the back, answer the questions before they become questions, please.
Yes. I love to do that, because I'm like, I'll look through, I'm going to put myself in the customer's shoes, and I'm going to go through some random scenarios. And so many times I'm like, why? What is happening here? And I'm like, someone will ask this. Someone will bring it up. And I rather not have a customer come, yapping away about something, complaining. I want to make it good for them the first time, so that they don't have an issue. They're just loving, the whole journey.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, the other side of like CX too is creating a really dope journey for your customer, like through awareness and consideration and purchase. Like, what's your philosophy, and like, how do you, it's not combat, but like, how do you approach that? Like, how do you approach that to get buy-in from the company to?
Yeah. I think for me, like personally, I have a really interesting background, because I studied history in college. I have a master's in history and fashion studies. And so I love...
We're coming back to that, because I went to fashion school.
Yeah. For me, like I love fashion. I love the history. I have done research on literally the history of people shopping. Like for me, that's so cool. And so I take that into what I do now. And it's not like, hey, it's not just creating like the absolute best experience when customers come to you. It's before they even reached your inbox. Mm-hmm. And, while your brand has all these other departments, you have to have a hand in that. You have to be communicating with them. You have to be making suggestions. And I think there was a time for me where maybe I was like, hey guys, like, did you think about this? Or what about that? Where now I'm like, let me talk to you a little bit more. I need to be a little bit more proactive. I'm going to be a little bit more forceful about this, because I know what I'm talking about. And I think too, there are all these other areas. Like when you're talking about products, sometimes you're like, okay, this sounds cool. I'm going to say it. And like, that's great. And then it's like, did you tell the whole story about the product? Because when I'm reading this, I'm not getting that. You know what I mean? Or, are you sending the right messaging in your emails? Because maybe you're not bringing that customer back. Maybe they're just like, what's new here? I'm seeing the same thing. Or what is different about, like, I've already shopped with you 3 times. Is it going to be the same every time? And I think that you have to be really creative. And for me, I come from a place of, it's like both creativity and problem solving, where I really try to mix that, because like, I as a person, like I have to get creative with stuff. And maybe that's what it is. Like sometimes it's just, how do you get stuff by in CX? You got to be you got to be smart about it. You got to find your way in because it doesn't always work.
I agree. The one thing that I always tell anybody I'm coaching or even my team, actually one of my colleagues, like she does like the CX technical work on our open lead team. And she's actually really new to CX, and she's fucking crushing it. Shout out to you, Kellyanne. Like you're crushing it. But I'm also in like a coaching thing with them too. And like, I'm constantly like give feedback about like the way that we share data to get the buy-in. Right. And so the biggest piece of advice that I have to anybody who is in CX or even marketing, like any position, when you're talking to executive level or you're talking to anybody that's like, you need them to understand the consumer's behavior to get the buy-in. You got to approach it with data.
Absolutely.
You have to come to the table with data, because what's interesting is like you can't say words on a screen and be like, the customers do this. You have to say how many of the customers, so what percentage. Come to the table with data and you're going to get more buy-in.
Absolutely. I am all about that. I think over the years it's been hard to push that because sometimes it might seem like, oh, we already know this information. Like finance already has that, or we know this, or like, no, we don't need that information until a problem happens. And so you always try and like, I'm going to start bringing up this a little bit more often. But I think for me, I don't want to just come just with the quantitative data. I always have a little qualitative data in there because I'm like, is there a problem with this product? Yes. This percentage of, there's this many damages per month. But I'm like, here's a photo. Here's a customer quote. Here's a customer review. I'm going to put it out there. Because sometimes they're like, whoa, what, this is what's happening? Or, like even with our reviews, I'm like, this is the person leaving reviews. I'm like, I don't think it's the one, like you have this idea of maybe who your customer is. And sometimes it's the people who, like the ones who interact with us the most are not the customer you think. It's not that the one we have like in every meeting, like this is our customer. Actually, no. Like, it's someone completely different. And I think understanding too that like I talk about this all the time at Jaxxon, I'm like, we have a lot of different types of customers. And it's like the ones we talk with on the phone, the ones who are live chatting, the ones who always leave reviews. I'm like, there are different types and you have to kind of nurture them in different ways. And you can't just think of it as like a one, umbrella for everyone. Yeah. Like you got to be able to go with it.
Oh, man, you really struck a chord there, because what's so interesting about that is that the people who are leaving the reviews and the people who are writing in are usually the ones that want to complain the most. And I don't mean like you're checking on your order, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about like you're complaining about and legitimately if something is broken, right? But the ones that like want to share an opinion are like, how much time in your day do you got? Because like, but the point about that is I'm not dogging, like, I don't want to get into like a dogging a customer thing. The point of bringing that up is because you're absolutely right. Like the customers who are buying your product and then versus the customers who are writing in are different customers.
Absolutely.
And you have to like, so the customers who are buying your product, and if something breaks, but there are ones out there that might never say anything at all.
Yes,
and
totally.
Then there's the customers who will say something, right? But you have to make sure you take care of both.
Yes.
In the same manner, in a way, but also take the ones that like wrote in kind of more serious to like understand cases a little bit different, because there's a lot of people who just wouldn't write in, and then
absolutely.
You don't know if you have a bigger problem.
And you just don't know.
Yeah.
And like for me, I'm like, let us ask them, like they want to talk, let them talk. I want to know, hey, what would you have done differently? Is there something that you suggest? Like if you didn't understand something on the website, should it have been somewhere else? What are you missing? A lot of the times they're like, well, no, not really. But like, but I'm like, hey, if you want to give feedback, I want to hear it.
Yeah.
And, it's sometimes that specific stuff, like you really can learn a lot. And, but yeah, like you said, you need to be able to take care of both types of customers.
Yeah, totally. I think you got to take care of both types of customers. And I think it's just so important. It's just so important to just not think about like, oh, okay, whatever, that's just one customer. Because like, on the CPG side, not on the apparel side, what's interesting is like, sometimes you'll get a complaint about maybe like taste or a lot code or something like that, right?
Yeah.
You actually have to take every one of those seriously.
Absolutely.
I come from a world where I've worked with like, I won't name brands, but like I've come from a world where I've worked with people who have experienced recalls on the supply chain and operations side, and a very major recall. So my practice that I learned was like every time in CPG, you got to take that seriously. And I think you have to like record it, but I think that the other side of it, even if it's an apparel brand or like a product, right?
Yeah.
You do need to take those things seriously because you do not know how many people have that same problem.
Absolutely. And that's like my biggest thing is like, I always tell my team, if you see something happen more than once, it's probably going to continue to happen. You're going to see it come up, especially when it happens like in a one day, like guys, there's a pattern to this. And if we can get ahead of it, we can absolutely, like, we find solutions for it. But you have to be able to talk about it. You have to be able to report it quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, y'all. Quick little interruption for a message from our sponsors. At Open Lake Collective, we specialize in building brands that last. From brand strategy that defines who you are, to customer experience design that keeps people engaged, to retention and lifecycle marketing that turns customers into loyal advocates, we're here to help you create meaningful connections that drive growth. Open Lake Collective, let's build a brand they love. Now let's get back to the show. So I want to like kind of switch back and talk specifically about Jaxxon, because I think it's really interesting that you've worked at Jaxxon for 4 years, but I think I'd love to know, like, what employee number were you?
Yeah, well, like less than 10.
Yeah.
I mean, when I first came in there, like we were all wearing a lot of hats. Not that we don't do that now. We certainly do. We're a larger team. We're still not a huge team. But I mean, I remember, you know, the days when I would come into the office and I'm like, there's like a handful of us and that's it. Like that's the team, you know? And it's exciting to see where it's come from. Like obviously every single year, like it's just changed so much. And as you grow, you know, when you're in that startup, you got to grow up. You got to grow up into a grown up company. And it's been interesting to see that. I think also like I was one of the older employees when I first started. And so I felt very much like mother bear, like I gotta take care of my little cubs here. So it's nice to have seen some of those people grow and maybe move on to other jobs, and to have new people come in and be like, wow, we've created more of a diverse group here. And it makes it really exciting.
Yeah, I know. The beginning stages of companies are just so fun.
It is. You know, I mean, there were times where, wow, things were crazy, but I think you learned so much. Yeah. You know what I mean? You have the opportunity to really learn a lot about just the whole, like running a business. And, you know, these are the things that worked when we were a small company. They're not going to work with this size company now, but we learned something from it, and now I can take a lot of that and be like, we don't do this for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's nice to be through that journey, because as we bring new members of our team on, they're like, why was it this way, or why, you know, I'm like, do you want to hear about why we do it this way or why we don't?
Yeah.
Like, let me take you back to 2022. You know, we've been there, we've seen some shit.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it interesting when you are with the company for over a few years, you know?
Yeah, I know. I think for you individually, though, right? Like, I don't know, like on a personal level for me, I'm so addicted to startups. Girl, I got a problem. It's called psychotic.
Yeah.
Okay. But I literally have this problem with, like, I love startups and I love those beginning stages of startups, because it's like you wear so many hats and you do so many things. But then at some point you scale. You scale, and then like you start, I wouldn't say losing. I don't want to put a negative connotation on it, right? But you start having to delegate.
Absolutely.
Your different hats, right? Like, and I'm curious for you, like, just in your background and working with Jaxxon in those beginning stages, and then going to like a different scaling stage, like how have you personally adjusted your working style to adjust with that scaling? Yeah,
for me, you know, there were times when it was hard, because I'm like, how do I delegate this when I'm so used to doing it myself? I think being able to learn about what other people are doing in their departments, it's been able, like, there's definitely a learning curve. You gotta, like, sometimes there's like some bumps in the road, you gotta go with it. But I think also it's opened up new opportunities to take on bigger projects, or even like, I feel like I'm going back full circle. Like, I'm looking into some maybe like new exciting VIP experiences. And I tested stuff like this like 3 months into the job, because we could, it was like the Wild West. You could do whatever you want.
I love the Wild West.
And, it's been a few years where I thought, hey, we got to do this in a very official way. And I was talking to our CEO, and it's like, why don't we go back to that? Maybe let's think a little bit about that kind of excitement and creativity of like doing these things, but doing it a little bit of a different way because we have a larger team now, because we have more resources. I think for me too, maybe I'm a little crazy. I like to take on a lot of extra work. And so if I can't do certain things in my current role, I'm going to go look for extra stuff elsewhere because I literally just can't stop. And, for me, sometimes that's really hard because I'm working like every single day. But I feel like it's helped me grow so much, and it's made me realize like what makes me happy, like what I'm passionate about. And I always bring those things back to like in my job. I'm like, I loved this. How can I bring this in here?
Yeah. Well, that actually leads to a question that I was just thinking to myself. So like you just have a really interesting and dynamic background. And I think a lot of us in CX have these wild backgrounds, right?
It's never on the straight and narrow. It is always like a wild story.
Nobody goes to school for customer experience, okay?
No.
Like you just like end up in it. And like for me, art school, fashion, didn't want anything to do with it, did this and the other thing, tech, then e-commerce, worked in the travel industry for a long time even, right?
Yeah.
But I'm really curious from you because you kind of have like this similar, like very creative background. What was the true turning point for you that you were like, fuck, I love customer experience?
Yeah, I think honestly, it was a few years ago. Like, okay, so I went to undergrad I was pre-med when I started.
Wow, we've had a lot of med or lawyers on
It is
show.
funny because I had every intention of still going through and being a doctor. I think maybe in my first couple years of college, but I was like, I'm going to do it a little differently. I'm going to go into the humanities and then like kind of do a different way. Was like, no, I love history. I love writing. And so history and like English background. Went to grad school, thought I was going to maybe be like a professor or work in like museums, very much on that. And then I was like, well, guess what? I'm not ready for a PhD. I'm going to do another master's degree because you know what? I'm just a glutton for punishment. So I went to another master's program that was fashion. And there was like, there's a lot more out there. This is actually, you can really do some different things here. And throughout my whole, through all my 20s, I worked in retail. I worked in different support kind of roles. I was a nanny. It was funny because the parents that I worked for, they had worked for larger companies and they were like, okay, so when you're done being a nanny, like what kind of company are you going to work for? Like, I want to know so like I can help you get that job. And like they were all just so supportive. And I realized like I like interacting with people. I like helping people, but I love the experience of shopping. And, for me, that's a lot about what I research for history, and I still do it a lot on the side. And so coming into this role, like, I didn't really know exactly where I was going to go with it. I lived in New York. I moved back here where I grew up to work more, to do different things with Jaxxon because I was like, hey, I'm going to be here. And maybe it was like 2022 where I started getting more involved in my own brand stuff where like I was doing I did some podcasts, I did some, like conferences, and I was like, wow, I feel so good talking about this, and it seems like people want to listen to it. And I think from there, I'm just like, I need to stop with any like, just, the thoughts of like, maybe I have imposter syndrome or whatever. And I think we all go through that. I mean, I feel like we talk about that all the time. And I was just like, these things can be mixed together. You know what I mean? And I've really over the years have been thinking more about like how can you mesh these things? And I think that's where it's really exciting for people in CX because we all seem to have very unique skills or backgrounds where it's like those things can work together. And for me, I really like the idea of with CX, I love storytelling. And for that is like you can put your storytelling into the experience at every point of the journey. And that's what I just really love. And I want to continue to find these ways. And it's like, maybe it's just about talking to other people in our field and just, I don't know, just making that connection. You're going to be able to put that back into your job.
Yeah, totally. I think I really love like the CX community as a whole. Like for me, I'm in Chicago, and it's a very like CPG town, right? And so it's a lot of like supply chain and operations. There's not even a lot of marketers there, or CX, right? So I travel a lot to like LA or Austin or New York mostly. But I love the community of CXers that we have, because it's like I think we're just all empaths at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And we're all empaths at the end of the day. So then it's like when we all sit down and have a conversation, we're like, I love this. Like when you say.
It's so true, you know? And I think like every time I've been able to get together, like, you know, it's a drive to go out to LA, but every time I do, I feel like I got so much out of this. I feel like I'm missing my friends now. Like you guys have gone, you know, everyone kind of goes in their own little direction. But I think like it's so good to be able to talk with people in CX. You learn so much about just us as a community. And I feel like every time I come out of it with a lot of confidence and just like, wow, I feel really empowered right now.
Yeah.
And feel like I'm really excited to be on this path. And like, there's so much more I want to do and like plan to do. But definitely it gives me like that motivation to keep going.
Yeah, totally. I think when I was coming up in CX, on the tech side, there wasn't really any of these communities, right? Like I always would crave it. And then when I moved over to e-commerce, was, you know, leading a very big brand. It was like my fourth employee of this brand. Didn't know fucking shit about e-commerce CX. Okay. I mean, I have like my philosophies, but the one person that really helped me like kind of start the networking was Eli. And then from there, you know, Eli really like helped like mentor me. But then from there, I like met like other individuals. And I think that we just have a really strong community, and it's
so
just
true.
And like the cool thing is, and I'll actually have to add you to this chat and the girls, and when they're listening to this, I am in a sisterhood of the traveling CX.
Oh my God. I need to be added ASAP.
I'm going to add you after this group chat with, this is going to be a bit of a shout out moment, but Nancy from Caraway, Sandy from Armra.
Oh yeah.
Molly from Corso, Ashley from Caraway. We also have Katie from Glossier.
Oh my gosh.
But it's like, it's such, and Madison from Sundays for Dogs. Like
I
Danny
love
from
this.
Open Late. Like,
oh my
there's
gosh.
so
This
many
is
of us.
amazing.
But it was so awesome because like, and the point of like bringing this up, it's not necessarily the hype moment. Like those are my fucking girls, and you're about to be in the chat. But like, the point of bringing it up is just like we're such empaths, and we all need to just like back each other, because it is hard out here as CXers to fight the fight and get the seat at the table.
Oh, 100%. And I feel that so much. And I think if you would have asked me that like 2 years ago, I would have been like, well, I'm just going to keep trying. And, you know, like I'm not one to quit. And I'm like, no, I'm not one to quit. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like there's a difference in my attitude. And I think too, hey, maybe it's just getting older. I don't know. Something about your 30s is pretty fabulous.
Oh, dude.
And I, you know, for me, like just even the other women at my work who aren't, you know, they're not in CX, but I'm like, I want to be there for you, and I want to build you up, and we all need to build each other up. And I think too, but you know, in our CX community, we need to fight for our space and our place at the table.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? I'm a big Hamilton fan, so I want to be in the room where it happens.
Yes.
And
oh my God, I'm like imagining on stage.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Twice.
And that is what, like, I think, you know, we have so much to offer. Yeah. We really see every single point of the brand. And I think it's just sometimes other people on your team need to be educated.
Yeah.
If they don't know, whose fault is that?
Yeah.
If you don't tell them.
Yeah.
You know
absolutely.
what I mean?
Absolutely. There's one question I want to ask you before we like wrap up, because I'm really interested in your perspective on this. And we talked a lot about misconceptions. But what is the one misconception about customer experience that you want to debunk?
I think the one thing is that you have a lane to stay in.
No, ma'am.
There is not one single lane. Yeah. You're on like the super highway. Like this is like, there is no one lane for CX. And while your focus might be on, you know, like, hey, there's an area I really got to focus on right now, you are in every lane. And I am changing lanes nonstop all day long. I mean, like, it's funny because I was working at home the other day, and my mom was hanging out with me, and she was like, who are you typing? Who are you messaging? Why are you getting so many messages? I'm like, this is my day to day. I'm like, I have someone from the e-com team messaging me. I have one of my agents. I have someone in ops. I have all these things all day and I can't stay in one lane because I'm straight up going from lane to lane all day long because there is not one place for you. You have to have a hand in so many areas, and to try to pigeonhole the CX team into one little space, it's not going to be good for your business. You're going to always be catching up because you're like, oh, now we have to ask about this. But if you just like open, like you're there, you're doing the thing, it makes it so much better. And I've really seen it's taken a long time to get there, and I'm still getting there. But 100%, there is not just one lane for CX.
No, absolutely not. Okay, one more question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, because these were actually really good. And also because we've like talked about like just different brands, right? But what advice would you give to brands who are still figuring out how to integrate CX with marketing and brand voice effectively?
Absolutely. I think that's such a great question because in my experience, I think you have to have those conversations between the different departments. You have to be able to be like, what do you consider retention?
Yeah.
What do you consider brand voice?
Yeah.
Is it just what you're putting in your ads? Is it what you're putting on the site? Is it the way we talk to our customers? There's a lot of different ways you can talk about that. Same with retention. Like, is it just marketing? Is it the reviews platform? What is that? And I think that you need to have the conversations and keep having them. And what I'm realizing is rather than waiting for the right moment, you need to be prepared. Just here's I'm laying it out on the table for you. Here we go. Because I think for me, I tend to be like, oh, well, I'm waiting for the right moment. And like, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I won't create all this work because it's not gonna come to anything. But if I never do it, I'm never gonna it's never gonna get in front of that person. So ask those questions, bring up those topics. You have to talk about it. And you have to talk about how it's all related, because I think that's the problem is that it's like, is it related? It absolutely is. And you just have to ask those questions. Yeah. And that's where it's, it might be uncomfortable at first, but you can't get anywhere if you don't start.
Yeah. You are so inspiring because we just share the same philosophy about CX, about like, let's go.
Yeah.
I'm showing up at that table. Sup. Sup.
Absolutely. It's like you have to be excited and passionate about it. And like, as someone who just, I love to work. I love to work on things that make me happy. Yeah. And sometimes it's hard. It's not easy. Yeah. But if you're willing to keep going, it rocks.
Yeah, totally. You hit actually one point that I do want to make too, is that, it's like we're very passionate about CX because we're passionate about the consumer's behavior, right? But what's interesting is that I do see people who fall into CX who are just like, even on the associate level, that are just like, I'm going to answer tickets and I'm going to do the things. Yeah. I would urge those people to strive for a little bit more than just answering the tickets, because you can create such a career out of customer experience if you really just deep dive into the consumer's behavior.
So much. And I think too, I've looked into, I've had people ask me like, hey, do you, I saw this open position. Can you read can you tell me, is this similar to what you do? Do you think I fit that position? Things like that, just giving kind of career advice. And a lot of times, I'll have people who are like, yeah, well, this brand asked me if, I'm willing to answer tickets every day. And I'm like, you can answer tickets, but I'm like, if you're coming in, especially at a higher, a manager or, whatever, a higher level in CX, you have to be able to strategize and think creatively. And absolutely, I feel like every day I want to answer one ticket. So I want to get in there and I want to see what I'm doing, and I don't ever want to lose that touch. But I'm like, what if I did something crazy? What if I just changed up this whole thing? What if I add on a new way for customers to contact us, or a new way for me to schedule calls? What if everybody wants to hey, I want to be called at this time and I want to talk to a specific person, and I don't know, you have to get creative. And I think if you're just stuck in there I'm answering tickets, I'm hitting my KPIs, our SLA, blah 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 blah, you're going to be stagnant. Yeah. Maybe you are giving great service, but you're not going anywhere. And that's how a CX team is going to stay in one place. Yeah. Then you are in one lane. Yeah. You're not giving anything else but just that one little area of what CX is. And there's so much more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Caela, I really appreciate you coming on. This is actually
amazing.
I know. I kind of feel like we need to do an episode 2 because I really want to keep going.
I could keep talking all night. We could be here forever, and everyone is just going to be like,
I know.
Are they still talking?
Yeah,
but
I know.
yeah, like
Can you
you
imagine?
can't stop me.
I know. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Tell the audience where they can find you if they want to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like the easiest way is on LinkedIn. But I am trying to work on, like maybe creating a website. Kind of, I feel like my Instagram is so boring. It's just like pictures of my dog and my little memes I post in my stories. I always joke, I'm like, I have commitment issues about posting like stuff, but I'm always in the stories. But I'm trying to get some of my writing out there as well. So hey, I might have a website very, very soon.
Yeah.
And it's just all the things that encompass moi.
Well, if you need any website help, I'm going to plug my girl real quick for anybody listening to this episode. My girl, Nikki from Buzz and Banter Studio, a fucking queen, y'all.
Okay, well, I'm going to be making some calls because
she is a baddie. She is in the baddie group. She actually helped us with Open Late Collective's website and revamped my personal website, justservion.com.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm going to be making some phone calls.
Yeah.
So I'm sending some emails because I'm ready to kind of take this next leap.
Done. Offline. Anybody tuning in, I really appreciate you all. I'll be in your earbuds next week. Catch you then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dang, we've made it to the end of the podcast and you're still here. So thank you so much for listening to Above the Fold podcast. For the best of this episode and every episode, be sure to follow us on Instagram and my YouTube channel. And for deeper dives on the secrets to brand success, don't forget to subscribe to my weekly newsletter, Sunday Postcards. All right, my dudes and gals, see you next week.